Thanks everyone for joining today. We're excited. We got a lot of great stuff to show you about how you can use our MCP server to take advantage of AI and use it with all of your great information in GrowthBook. And so Ryan's going to be taking the lead. He's done a lot of the development work on this, as well as built the demo. And we're fortunate to have Luke with us as well, particularly when we get to the end to be talking about any questions you've got, especially on the data science side. With that, I'll turn it over to you, Ryan.
Great. Thank you. All right, let's get started. All right, so quick agenda, kind of understand what we're going to do. We'll give a quick explanation of what MCP is in case you don't know why it matters. And then we'll jump right into talking about installing the GrowthBook MCP server. We'll do some practical demos from checking flags to creating experiments. And then we'll get into some more advanced workflows where we're using AI to ideate and build new features. And then at the end, we'll leave some time for Q&A, so you can ask questions about the MCP server or about anything related to GrowthBook or experimentation. And we have Luke Smith here, who's one of our data scientists, to help out with some of the responses to that. All right, so what is MCP? So MCP stands for Model Context Protocol. It's an open standard that was developed by Anthropic. And so what it really does is it connects AI tools, AI assistants, so things like VS Code, Claude Desktop, Cursor, to external tools. And in this case, relevant for this webinar to GrowthBook, but it could also be things like Canva, Slack, MongoDB, all kinds of different tools. So it's really this amazing kind of way to connect these things together. And what it really enables from a kind of fundamental point of view is that your AI is not just now creating text, but it can actually do things. And that's what we're going to kind of look at in this webinar. So why it matters in particular in reference to GrowthBook is that all of a sudden your AI tool becomes very context aware. So it knows in particular what your feature flags are, what your experiments are, what your metrics are. It has a lot more data to go on, like real world data. So it's not just giving as much generic answers, but very specific answers. It's also action oriented, which follows what I had just said about why MCP is interesting or important. But it allows you to create flags, create experiments, analyze experiments, do all kinds of actions in GrowthBook and with your code. And then finally, it allows for a really nice workflow integration where you don't have to leave your AI tool of choice to get information or to do things. You can kind of have it all in one place. And some of the text on the right here are the different tools that are available in the MCP server. You don't need to know any of that, but that's just kind of give you a little preview of all the different things that you can do. All right, so then we get to installing the GrowthBook MCP server. I'm going to show this in the demo, but just to kind of give you a sense of how this works. Really, all you need to install this are two things, and that is a GrowthBook API key or a personal access token. And I'll show the difference about that in a second. And then your email address that you use with GrowthBook. That helps associate when you create things with your user. But that's it, really, all you need to get started. If you're using a tool like Cursor or VS Code, I will shout out that you do need to have Node installed, and we have directions about that on the docs. And the other kind of you see here in this little code snippet, which I'll talk about more again later. But if you are self-hosting or if you want to run this locally, there are a couple other kind of parameters you need to configure just to show where your server is, your GrowthBook server is, and then where the front lives. But it's all very easy to get up and going, so it's pretty nice. And then on the right here, we have just a snippet of kind of the tools that are supported. Basically, any kind of client that works with MCP is eligible. So popular ones, Cursor, VS Code, Claude Desktop, Claude Code, Windsurf, Klein, Anti-Gravity, Gemini, CLI, and a whole bunch more. I think, at least informally, there's about 100 different tools that will work with the GrowthBook MCP server, and probably much more than that. If there's one on here that I have it listed that you're using, and I'd be curious to know. You should put it in the Q&A. All right. And then a little preview of the types of things you can do with the MCP server. Under the feature flags camp, you can create and check flags. You can set up targeting rules. You can generate TypeScript types, which is a little more of a niche feature, but very nice. And then you can also find and remove stale rollouts. With experiments, you can view and analyze results. You can create new experiments, and then you can ideate based on past learnings and do some meta analyses. So some pretty cool stuff. And then there's like a lot of just other little tools that are available for things like exploring metrics, getting your projects, attributes, SDK connections, this sort of thing. And then, of course, interacting and searching with the GrowthBook documentation. So that's a nice little preview of some of the things that we're going to show. And before we get to it, one other kind of note to make. So there is a bit of a cautionary principle with the GrowthBook MCP server. We don't want something unexpected to happen, of course. So for the most part, it doesn't update or delete anything. It doesn't delete anything. And then it doesn't really won't change anything that already exists in GrowthBook. Experiments are always created in a draft state, and then flags are always disabled by default. And flags can't be, for instance, switched on or off through the GrowthBook MCP server. And this is all by design. We just don't, like I said, want anything unexpected happening. When you have these tools available to AI, sometimes it can infer something that you don't want to happen. Uh, of course, also all these tools require, a human an intervention by default to run. You can turn this off, of course, if you want, but you'll see that every time one of these tools wants to run, I have to click the approve button for it to happen. And then the other thing that you can do is, so I said you can use an API key or a personal access token. The API key is kind of gives the AI, access to everything, which is what you may want. But then also, if you have different users, for instance, that can only see experiments, but they can't create experiments, they can use a PAT, a personal access token, and that will give them the same permissions with the MCP server. So they won't be able to create experiments, but they will be able to view experiments, for instance. So that's just some of the kind of approach to the MCP server that when we take when building it. With all of that kind of out there, we can now get into the live demo. Now let's go. All right, so I want to set the scene a little bit, just kind of because there'll be a little bit of jumping around and stuff, just so we're clear on everything. This is the kind of sample app, demo app that we'll be targeting. So it is a dashboard, a health tech dashboard. You can see there's this patient, John, here who has a lot of different appointments coming up. And we won't be doing too much with this, but I just want to kind of call that out that this is the company that their data we're going to be targeting. And I'll come here. This is GrowthBook, of course. And um, like I said, there's all these experiments that Internet MD, this is the name of the company, that they've run. And so here are just we have all this experiment history. So we'll be playing with that. There are, of course, then all these different feature flags as well. And then the last part here, I'm going to be showing the GrowthBook MCP server in two different tools. So this is Cursor, and I'll show you that in a second. The other tool then that I will be showing is Claude Desktop. And I'm going to be showing you how to first install the MCP server in both of these. So let's do Claude Desktop first. So with Claude Desktop, what's nice is it's very easy to get set up and going because we are in the official connectors directory. So what you can do here is you come down to this modal and click on settings and go to extensions and browse extensions here. And there's this connectors directory. And so these are all different ways to, all different things you can connect with, which is pretty cool. But we have here GrowthBook connected or available right here to connect to. So I'm going to click install. It's going to confirm that. It's going to install. And now this is all we have to do to configure this up. So I'll actually show you where you can kind of get this. So I'm going to jump back over to GrowthBook. I'm going to come down here to my API key. And this is, of course, this is a local GrowthBook instance. You never want to share this key. You can see that it says secret in it. So you know that you don't want to share it. But I want to put it in here. I would put in the email that's associated with this GrowthBook account. And then because I'm using a self-hosted instance here, I want to put this self-hosted URL in. You don't need to change this if you're on cloud. You can just use the defaults. I'm going to save that up. And so now it's installed. I'm going to go ahead and enable it. And that's it. It's all ready to go, which is pretty cool. I can also click on configure here, and the Claude desktop gives a really nice interface for managing this. And one thing that you can kind of see here is it'll show you all the tools. And what's very nice is that you can change the approval on an individual tool basis. So I could say that I want this to have needs approval every time. That's the default. But I could also say always allow this tool or block this tool, never let it run. So it gives you a lot of granular control over how this works. Um, so yeah, so we'll come back to this, but now it is installed. I can actually click here and see that there's this ad from GrowthBook. We'll talk about that in a second, but this is all ready to go. Let's show you how to install it in Cursor. Cursor is also very easy. So I'm going to open up the command palette, search for MCP, and you can see that there's this open MCP settings here. And I already have GrowthBook installed, but all you would do here is click New MCP Server, and there is this command that you have to enter in. We have the instructions for all this in the docs, so you can kind of copy and paste it and then just put in whatever values you need. But that's it. And I'll just come back here. You can see that it's connected because it has this little green dot showing that everything's okay. If you ever need to restart it, you can toggle this on and off. And then I can also click on this to drop down, and like in the Claude desktop interface, I can turn tools off and on by clicking them off or on like this. One of the kind of best practices for MCP servers, especially if you start getting a lot of them, they can kind of crowd up your context space. And so it can be good if you're not using certain tools or things to just kind of remove them from that space. Another thing that you can also do here, which is nice, is you can actually hover over any of these tools to get a description of what they do and then what the parameters are. We also have that in the docs, but you can get it right here. So with that, we've now installed the GrowthBook MCP server in both Cursor and Claude, and we are ready to get going. The first kind of practical demos that I want to show here have to do with feature flags, or actually even the one before that. Let's look at this. All right, so this is a React app. Again, this is tied to this health tech demo. So this is this page in code. And one of the things you might be doing when you set up your GrowthBook instance here is you might need this client key. I already have it here, but I want to show you how you could use this and get this right from the GrowthBook MCP server. So get my client key from GrowthBook for the, what is this? Internet ND project. So this is all I'm going to type in here to my new chat in Cursor. And it'll take a second. So what happened is that it inferred that it needs to know about my projects. So it wants to run this tool, get projects GrowthBook. So it's a GrowthBook tool. And so, like I said, all of these are set up right now by default to ask for my approval. So I'm going to say, yeah, go ahead and do that. And so now it knows that information. And so now it's all going to run the Git SDK connections with that Internet MD project. So it's inferred everything that it's needed, and it's surfaced that information. And you can see it's the same one, so it is the right one. And we could then take up its response of helping to integrate into the code base, or just copy and paste right in. And this saves you, right? You're setting up GrowthBook maybe in a new app, or you're like want to kind of check on your SDK connection rather than jumping on over to GrowthBook and having to get all that sort of stuff. This has it all right here, which is pretty nice. All right. So another thing that we can do here is just check on our feature flags right from our code editor. So I will just copy this prompt and say, show me my most recent feature flags. So it takes, a second as it does. One thing I want to show here with this is, so of course it knows to call the get feature flags tool from GrowthBook. We have this most recent parameter. And because I just said I wanted the recent feature flags, it set that true. And that just defines the order of the information that comes back. So flags that are more recent are going to now come back instead of older flags. And then it's chosen a limit of 20. I'm going to run this. And so that response has already come back. This is all the features, and now it's summarizing all of those features for me, which is nice. So if I was like trying to remember the name of a flag or something in the code base and I needed to get some of these values, this makes it a lot easier. And then I could do something like this flag, so flag health goal templates, and say, tell me about flag health goal templates. And so now it knows that I'm just asking about a single flag. It has the ID of that flag, and it's let it run this tool. And so what's cool here is it sees, and it just infers this, that it has an experiment associated with this flag. So it's also going to get information about that experiment. And so now it's coming back. It has the flag, it has the overview, all the different information about that flag, the same sort of stuff that you would get in GrowthBook. And then it also has now all the associated experiment kind of information. So we have the hypothesis, the description, we have the status. So this was an experiment that was stopped and had lost. Tells us about the phase of it, the variations, the primary metrics, secondary metrics, guardrails. And then what's nice is it also even gives me the links to look at it right in GrowthBook. So I'll pop over here. Here's that flag if I wanted to check it out, or even to look at this experiment, which is cool. Um, so this, I think already you can kind of see, you can just surface information very easily. I never had to leave my code editor. You could do the same thing in Claude Desktop. So it's just a nice way to get this information very quickly. Um, There's a couple other kind of cool flag related tools that I'm not going to show right now, but I just want to call them out. And if we have time at the end and you're interested in this, we could go over it. One of them is we have a tool that will automatically remove stale flag rollouts from your code base. It's a little more niche, but it is cool. And then another one that's pretty neat is if you're using TypeScript like we are here, we can generate flag types automatically, which makes your coding much safer. Um, and gives you a lot of nice autocomplete. That is something that else is also very cool, but it's a little bit, again, more niche. But if you're interested in that, let me know. I can show you that. All right. So we've so far been mostly just looking at getting information. Maybe we should try creating something. And let's see. Okay. What I want to do is jump on over to the app. I'm going to open a new window here. Come down. And so we have this bit of this just span right here, family care plan. I'm going to bring that into my chat window. And I want to say something like create a new feature flag around the selected code and add a force rule so that it only shows to users on Chrome. It's a really weird example, I know, but um, I'll use this for now. One thing too, before I press go on this, or I'll go ahead and press go and say, um, When you're using this, sometimes the results are unpredictable. We'll see how it interprets this. It sometimes can be a little weird. All right, so it's getting my projects, it's getting my environments. So it's kind of just building up its context window for this. But yeah, so sometimes it can not run unexpectedly or do not exactly what you want. I didn't give it a whole lot of information, but we'll see what it says. If that's the case, you can, of course, always just reassess. I mean, I think we've all been using AI tools extensively now and have run into issues with that. All right, so it's creating a new feature flag here, and then it's going to add a Chrome-only force rule using the browser attribute. So just to kind of back up here real quick, I'll run that. But it's what it did do is it wanted to make sure it had all the context. So it got our environments, it got our projects, but also importantly, it got our attributes to really see which attributes were available. That was part of the reason that I used Chrome, because I know there's a browser attribute, but it figured out that that's what it needs to use. A more realistic example here, just to say, you could say, do something like, if the user is a beta user or an internal user, maybe you want to set up a rule like that, or maybe even like a geolocated type of thing. But let's see now what's going on. All right, so then it created the feature flag, and then it created the force rule. So the force rule, kind of some kind of condition needs to be met. And so what is really neat here then is it created that flag in GrowthBook, but then it also updated our code base to use that flag according to GrowthBook best practices. So we can see here that it brought in the use feature is on hook, and it set that value to this variable, and now it's only showing this variable or this span when this variable is true. So it updated that code. And so it also put in the right rule. And let's actually look at it in GrowthBook and see if it did everything correctly. All right. So another thing it does is it tries to name the features like other features if it can. So it follows, your organization's flow. And then it did give us a nice description of what the flag is here. So to control visibility of family care plan menu item, but only to Chrome users for whatever weird reason. And then, like I said, this cautionary principle. So you can see right now that this is disabled for the environment. So I would have to click that on to turn it on. It's serving false by default, but then it's come up with this nice rule here: force enable for Chrome users only. So if browser equals Chrome, set to true. So this is a really kind of exciting little workflow that you can do with the MCP server, where we've created a feature flag with a rule, kind of just one little single line of natural language. So that's really nice. Let me jump back over to cursor here. And it kind of tells you what you need to do next here with this flag. All right, so we've done a lot of feature flag stuff. Let's get right on to experiments. Now I'm going to actually just discard these changes for now. All right, so we have experiments. And so let me start by just we can do the same type of thing where I can say get my recent experiments. With the Get Experiments tool, there's something that is important to know. This is interesting. So sometimes Cursor will write to a file if it feels like the context is too big. That's just something that I see happen sometimes. It's interesting. We don't need to get into that. But so one of the things to notice with the Get Experiments tool is that mode, there's a mode parameter, and the mode parameter can have three values. This is in the docs, but metadata, that's basically the kind of high level information. That's just the response from the GrowthBook server, the API, about your experiments. So this will include kind of that metadata, and then any kind of high level information that can be included. We also have a full mode, and full mode will return the metadata and your experiment results. The thing to know about that that's really important is that it can fill up the context window very quickly because it's a lot of data. And so that's something you want to really use judiciously. And then finally, another mode, which is pretty interesting, is our summary mode. And this will basically kind of mix together experiment results, metadata, and metric data, but in a little more kind of refined package so that you get more of a like high level view, but still a lot of data. And this is really great if you're trying to identify trends or you're trying to do some kind of meta analyses or ideate on new features. I'll show you this in a demo, but that is also really interesting to know. A lot of times the tool will infer which mode you need. You don't even have to put it in, but it's good to be aware that those three exist. So we have here the return of the 10 most recent experiments from GrowthBook, and it gives us this high level of the experiment. But again, there's not a whole lot of information here. What we can do is say, take for instance this first one and say, give me the full results for symptom duration presets. All right, so while that's going, I'm going to actually jump up. Well, let's see. It's coming back. So here you can see again that the mode is full. And so now we get a lot more information coming back about that experiment, our different metrics, guardrails, etc. And then it gives us the link to the experiment. So this is, again, kind of cool. You can get this information right in your AI tool and then use it however you want. One of the things that we're going to try here is let's kind of think about we wanted to add a new feature to our dashboard, but we want to do it in a really kind of clever way. So what I'm going to say here is get my experiments from last quarter, um, looking for um, trends in user engagement. Tell me what works and what doesn't. Um, and I'm going to be explicit and tell it to use summary mode. And I might even put it in plan mode. While that's running, I am going to jump on over to Claude Desktop and show you another thing that we can do here. So in Claude Desktop, everything works pretty much the same. There, of course, isn't a code base, so that those parts of the tool aren't going to work. But you can run all the same tools, the same analyses. One thing that we do ship with the MCP server is also some pre-made prompts. So we have here add from GrowthBook, and I can do this analyze my experiment program prompt. And so I'll just show you what this looks like. So use GrowthBook to fetch my recent experiments, analyze the experiments, and tell me which experiment types are actually worth running versus either. What's the one pattern in our losses that we're blind to? If you could only run 3 experiments next quarter based on the results, what would they be and why? What's the biggest methodological risk in our current approach that could be invalidating results? So this is pretty interesting. Let's try this out. And if you find, um, well, if you find a new, I don't know what happened there. Let's try it again. If you find a prompt that seems to really be exciting for you, that to work really well, please share it. We have an MCP server channel in our community Slack where it's brand new, but if you have feature requests, if you have prompts that you found that work, we will add those prompts to the MCP server and give you credit. So again, we see that Claude is asking for permission, and we can see that the most recent is true. The mode is summary, so everything looks good there. I'm going to click allow, And while this is going, because this does take a little bit of time to get all the data, I'm going to jump back on over to Cursor and m- uh, kick all these off. This is probably even now going to take a little bit longer because they're both querying GrowthBook for the data. All right, this will take a little bit.
So, right, and while we wait, it occurs to me that kind of one of the big things about this is it can be like a real kind of productivity boost for a developer who's trying to go back and forth between coding for their app and for doing experimentation.
Yes, it's definitely is.
And so that's one of the things I'd encourage as you're kind of watching this whole, uh, presentation is just think about ways in which you could incorporate what you're seeing into your development lifecycle. Hopefully, it accelerates how you're developing with GrowthBook.
Yes, I think that's a big one. When I first kind of started using it, the thing that I think is most exciting was some of that, like where you can set up your feature flag in code, in GrowthBook, like all with a single line. That's really nice. And while this is going, I can show another tool that is a little bit different. Um, and so this is like, so let's say we wanted to set up sticky bucketing. I can say search GrowthBook docs for this. So we have this search GrowthBook docs here. We can click run. And so what's nice is that it's going to get back results. But if the LLM doesn't think that the results are sufficient yet, it'll just continue to search the docs until it gets enough information. And then even so, it knows that I'm in a React JavaScript app. So actually, it's going off and also searching for that. So this is a nice way to interact with the docs again, right from your code editor. One thing too, I will just point out while we're kind of waiting for everything, we do have our docs here, docs.growthbook.io. We also have an AI agent here on the docs. This is a different technology. I mean, it's the same technology as a different provider, Kappa. This is really good. I highly recommend this if you haven't used it before, but you ever have questions about GrowthBook, how to set things up, how to use things. This references not only the docs, but also the code base and previous conversations about, troubleshooting things that people have in GrowthBook. So highly recommend using this if you are trying to figure out how to do something in GrowthBook. We use it internally sometimes. It's a great tool. All right, so it came back here. So remember, I know we have like three different things going right now. But I asked GrowthBook here, the docs, about how to set up sticky bucketing. Sticky bucketing is something that's required, for instance, for multi-arm bandits, or if you're transitioning, or if you're looking for a way to kind of keep experiment assignments across different changes or different devices. This is how you can do that. But it is more technical. It's a little bit harder to set up. So it ran all these searches to our docs, and I didn't tell it really anything other than just I want to do this, but it knew that I was in a React project, so it looked for specific stuff related to that, and then looked how GrowthBook is configured. So it's nice because again, right, it's not just a generic how do I set this up, but it's like taking how do I set this up for my specific app, which is cool. But let's see then what it said. Um, so setting up sticky bucketing using local store sticky bucketing service, no extra dependencies. And see, and then so it even went in and implemented it, but it says set up sticky bucketing in your So it tells me what it did. It imported this service from GrowthBook. It added the sticky bucket service to the GrowthBook configuration, and then it tells me how it works. And it tells me that there is an alternate option if I wanted to do the cookie based instead. This is how I would have to set that up. So it's a pretty good response, and it even went ahead and did the initial setup for me, which is pretty cool. All right, so let's jump back. Let's see where we are with our other things. This still is wanting me to run some more information. Yep. So this is kind of interesting. So it's asking me which quarter I'm referring to. So I'll do Q4 2025. And this is something I've seen Cursor do recently where it'll have a nice interface for asking clarifying questions. Let's see where we are here. This is really getting a lot of information. All right, well, that's going. Let's see. While this is writing very slowly, I'll jump into something that we are going to do later, but I could show it now while this is all going. Trying to open a new. So you might have seen it already, but we have another little Easter egg here. Add from GrowthBook. We have a GrowthBook wrapped template, and I can even show this is a much more involved template. And I'm not going to run this right now. I'll show you one that's kind of already been baked. But what this is really cool for, so you all know probably Spotify Wrapped and all the different iterations now have come after that. This is a way you can do that for your GrowthBook experimentation program. It'll take your experiments from 2025 and then do kind of a wholesale analysis on that. And I'll show you it. Here I have one that's already been done. So it goes through and does whatever it needs to do to get the information, and then gives you just the text kind of version of this, but it actually creates a whole slideshow here and gives you your year in experimentation wrapped 2025. Let's see what you discovered this year. So lets you scroll through, it'll show you how many experiments you've completed, how many users you've reached, and then if you have any kind of still running or draft experiments, it'll tell you your win rate. So this is above average for better or worse. Win rate, 31 wins, 19 losses, 7 flat. It'll tell you your biggest win. So this was this appointment cost transparency. Huge win there, right? 227%. We would love to see that. And then our biggest learning, the appointment booking flow, that was a 62.9% decrease in the metric. Shows us that our kind of experiment velocity, we can see that the second half of the year, we really picked things up, which is good. Huge increase. And then it also gives you a little data integrity protected slide where it shows you some SRM issues or guardrail triggers that were hit, some fun facts about the experiments, and then finally it gives you a numbers at a glance, so kind of everything that happened in the year, and then finally a little card that you can screenshot and share with the team or share out as you see fit. But it's kind of a fun little thing you could do if you do this, and it's interesting. Please share it in the channel. We'd love to see it. It's just a kind of cool, fun thing that MCP enables to do, and you can check that out. All right, let's come back here. All right, so this was that. So to re kind of focus everything, this again was the pre-made prompt we have to kind of give a analysis of the experimentation program for the recent experiments. So this is basically for the year. It has 57 experiments. So what it does is it has 4 different points that it pulls out. The first one is experiment types worth running versus theater. So it looks at all the data, all the experimentation, and says that worth running. So transparency features, cost transparency, insurance verification, background blur, all crushed it. And so what it's saying is that when we add features that are related to transparency in different kind of ways, that has all showed great lift in our different experiments that we've run. Accessibility improvements and trust mechanisms are also experiments that are worth running. But then interestingly, also it'll pull out theater. So experiments that don't seem to really move the needle or to hurt things. And so here, for instance, the top one it picked out was friction reduction experiments. And so although we're trying to reduce friction or reduce booking steps for this healthcare app, um, it's actually backfired, which is pretty interesting. So that isn't something that seems to be making our users more engaged or like the experience having a better experience. Um, the next thing it tries to pull out or show to you is the pattern you're blind to. And so this is interesting. It says you're applying e-commerce playbook to healthcare and it's killing you. And so it's interesting that it's saying that, we're treating this healthcare app like an e-commerce app and that seems to be backfiring. So we're optimizing for conversion rates, but breaking user experience. And they want what they value here seems to be different than what we're looking at. So that's pretty interesting. Again, it's something like maybe it's not doesn't hit the nail on the head, but perhaps, like, leads you in a different path that you wouldn't have seen before. So I think it can be a valuable tool. And then it pulls out the third thing, 3 experiments to run next quarter. So an appointment decision confidence score was the first experiment. It gives an idea of what it did or why it picked this out. Visual insurance verification journey, appointment, commitment, contract. Again, what's so cool about this, I think, is that it's using your actual experiment history to generate these ideas with real data. So it's not just a kind of generic, how do I make my app better, or giving it some basic information. It's really looking at the trends and giving you some ideas. The last part here is kind of flagging any kind of methodological risks. And so it sees that there's some experiments with SRM of problems, failures, and it kind of talks about how or you could approach or fix that or what you need to do. Um, and then it gives you sort of a high level summary at the end. So it says healthcare isn't e-commerce. Users don't want speed, they want certainty. And so it gives a nice kind of little thing to think about in terms of your experimentation program. So I like that. It's pretty cool. And this again, all you have to do here is add from GrowthBook, click analyze my experiment program, hit go, and that's all you need to do. So it's very low friction, right, in terms of running this and seeing what happens. I also like that. There's no penalty for running it. All right, so back now to Cursor. It looks like it's still going, which is taking a while. I'm gonna just try. I'm gonna try just doing it again here. Let me see what else we got. Hey, this is really the last demo I want to talk about. Let this go for a second. Make sure that you are putting your questions in. If you have questions on the Q&A, if you still have that slide, um, maybe show that real quick. See, we have some coming in. Here's the information to add that. If you have your phone, you can take this QR code, take a photo, and open that link, or else go to slido.com and put in this number.
So, Ryan, should we just answer a few questions? Oh, it looks like it's coming back now, huh?
It is coming back. Oh yeah. So it did come back. Yeah, so this is par for the course, right? And sometimes it'll work, sometimes you might get some weird stuff. But this time, same prompt, nothing really changed. It did come back. One thing that's also interesting, I'll just flag real quick, is that right now I'm in auto mode for Cursor, but I could take that off and I could try it with any of these models. And what's really interesting in Cursor too is I can use multiple models. And so what I could do is take my kind of analysis that I want to run, my meta-analysis on all my different experiments. And I could actually give that to all these different models and see what each different model returns and see if it's the same, is it different, what is, how does each one perform. So that's kind of like a neat thing that you can do here. I'm gonna just put it back to auto for now. But anyway, so all right, so Q4 performance, there was 20 experiments. Here's my win rate, average experiment duration. It gives me my top engagement wins here. So appointment booking, system logging, it tells me what didn't work, and then my key trends and insights. So transparency and trust was it a trend, insight, input methods, personalizations. One step. Oh, excuse me. So then it says to double down on cost transparency and avoid what to avoid and what to test further. Hmm. Sorry, I got a little cough. But this is what we can do now with this information, and we could go through it more carefully, of course. But I want to say, so based on this trend analysis and uh, the dashboard in app, what feature should I build next that will improve user engagement? And I think, of course, you could include more here in terms of, giving in more detailed instructions, but for the sake of the demo, kind of move quickly for this. But so now it's looking at my actual code, is taking into consideration that analysis it just did, and we're going through that. All right, let's jump on over here to some of these questions. All right, so does it require a paid subscription? Uh, no, so you can be on any GrowthBook plan and use this. So on the starter plan, free plan, it works. It also works on self-hosted as well as on cloud. Um, so does GrowthBook MCP support retrieving experiment results broken down by dimension? It doesn't right now, but it's something that if there's some interest in that, we could definitely add it. So if that's something that's important, we could definitely do it. So let us know about that. And can MCP used to debug growthbook experiments, such as when I notice an uneven control versus variant exposure split? I think it could be helpful. I'm not sure exactly how, to be honest, but I think that this often will happen. It kind of depends on how the experiment is split up. But what I would do is if I had the page where GrowthBook was set up, I think you could do two things. So one, if you have the code, you could definitely ask, the LLM to kind of look for some issues and reference, the docs that it could check for that. Also, though, you could even give it potentially the page if that experiment is live somewhere to see if it can detect what's going on. There is a pretty interesting. So Chrome has a DevTools MCP server that can actually like do actions on your page. And so that could be a way that you could potentially use a different MCP server to help you diagnose what's going on in terms of some kind of uneven exposure split. Um,
It's a great question, though, and I definitely think it's an area that we'll invest in more over time. We see it.
yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. All right. So it has already gone ahead and implemented the feature. So it's this recommended this appointment cost transparency feature because similar features have done well in the past. And show what it wants to do is show cost information in the appointment cards and display insurance coverage, out of pocket estimates, add cost breakdown when scheduling new appointments, use a feature flag for gradual roll up. Um, that's very cool. I didn't actually want it to create the feature flag right away, but it's already gone ahead and done that. It's doing all the code here. Um, what I will do actually here is say, remove that flag. Instead, let's create a new feature called MCP demo um experiment and wrap the new feature with that. Well, that's actually, I said the wrong thing. Let's create a new experiment. All right, let's see what else we have here. So how does MCP determine which experiment phase to parse data from? So I think right now it's not very smart about that. And that's something that's a good call out. I think I'll have to check. I'm not sure. I'll get back. I'll get back to you on that. I have to look to see what is actually working under the hood. But I believe it's just maybe the first phase that it looks at. But I don't know for sure. I have to check. That's a good question, though. Yes. So you mentioned it can't update delete at the moment. So that is true. You'd have to delete it and redo it, or yeah, you'll have to have some kind of manual intervention. The good thing is that in my experience, like if it does it, it's usually not that problematic. Like, I haven't had a lot of cases where it's messed it up really badly. But it is true that if it creates something that's not exactly right, you do have to go and delete it. Um, it's a good, like, kind of call out, but it's a sort of a balance between caution and expediency. All right, so there's a request for the TypeScript types. We'll see if we can get to that. To set it up with Claude Code. I will update the docs later today to show that. It is pretty similar to what I've already shown, but I will update the docs with later today and show you how to do that. Um, but it does work very well in Claude Code as well. All right, let's come back here. Oh, all right. So another thing to call out actually, which we haven't seen before, so it's creating an experiment. But, when it creates an experiment, it has to run this tool beforehand called get defaults. And what this does is there's a lot of, like, inputs, right, when you're creating an experiment, and so what it does is it kinda samples your previous experiments to look at what are the most common inputs. Now you can also customize this. We have a set kinda user defaults tool, but basically it's going to say, "Alright, this is how they usually set up experiments. I'll follow that pattern," and it makes it, much easier to get everything up and going. So it did return this experiment. And then it's updating the code now to use this new flag, which is pretty cool. Tells us all the changes that we did. And so it gives us the links here. So it created this experiment. And so put in the description here. It put in our hypothesis. So if we display upfront appointment costs with insurance coverage breakdown, then appointment booking rates will increase because financial uncertainty is reduced. Um, And then, of course, it's also made the feature flag that goes with this. So this is like kind of a cool workflow. Just to reiterate, it looked at past experiments to get the trends of what's working and what's not in relation to a particular metric like user engagement. It then looks at the existing code base and features to pick out something what it thinks would maybe be a good addition, a good new feature, so an idea for a feature. And then, if that looks good, it can also then immediately launch into kind of a prototype of that feature in the code base, and even then wrap it with a feature flag and experiment, all in a few lines of natural language. And so I think that that kind of shows you sort of this workflow that you can kind of imagine using the MCP server for. But I think some of the feedback that were in the questions is really good. And so I really welcome you to come either to the GitHub repo, leave issues, but then also in our Slack channel to give feedback or to ask questions. And let's see if there's any. I know we're just about at end of time. If there's any kinds of other questions. I don't think so. So I don't think we'll have time to do this, but can do. You can just say generate types for my flags. Should be enough. And that's it. So you can see here, it created this new file where it pulled in all of the types for our feature flags. And then it'll even give you some, to show you how to use this. And then you can use the docs even to look a little bit more about when how to use it more in the code base. But that's about it. But it makes definitely working in TypeScript much nicer. Um, cool. Ashley, do you have any kind of closing
No,
words of
thanks everyone for joining. Keep an eye out for the announcement on next month's office hours. We look forward to sharing with you other great features inside GrowthBook so you can keep getting more out of the product. So thanks for attending. And definitely, as you start to use the MCP server, go into the Slack community and provide us feedback, share what you're seeing. Love to see screenshots of people's 2025 wrapped. Anything you've got like that would be terrific. Thanks, everyone.